the story of redemption we're at now. We've been in several different stories from the time we began yesterday. And I need to tell you, I've grown up on stories and I love them. My mother was the storyteller par excellence. Until her death, until 4 days before her death, actually, in late April, she would tell her stories to anyone who had ears. They were charming stories. They were historical stories. She would talk about how she danced when Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic. She would talk about how she quit school at age 14 so she could start her career in a factory, making shirts in order to help support their family of 9 children. Janine and I used to take notes fastidiously because there was so much genealogical data in what she said. It was so exciting to hear the way she put things together, would even record the messages, just to hear her voice over and over again. And her charm, her enchantment in telling these stories. But it turned out that the last couple of years in the nursing home, her stories became more and more confusing. Her stories were a mixture of the things that happened in the past, the things that happened that day, and the things she hoped would happen next week. It all came together in a story. It was, by the way, thrown into all that past, present, and future were characters from Louis L'Amour books that she kept reading. Now, I used to go away from the nursing home and say to Janine as we walked out of the car, "Poor Mom, she's in a different time zone." And now that she's gone, I realize that maybe she had an advantage. Maybe there was something powerful about grasping the truth for her to move so fluidly between past, present, and future. And here I am stuck in my system of chronology. Yeah, I wish I could do that. Move back, forward, and then return, of course. Now, we've been talking a lot about the Bible the last couple of days. And just think of how Bible study could be facilitated if we could go back in time, 2,000 years. If we could walk the dusty roads of Palestine, sit on the mountainside listening to Jesus' sermon up there. What would happen if before noon tomorrow, one of you would be elected to go back in time? One. Well, it's one more vote to make before noon, but would any of you volunteer to do it? I mean, just think of what could happen. You could actually be part of that parade alongside Jesus on Palm Sunday, going into Jerusalem and hear the crowds cheer him on. You could sit at the photographer's side of the table, the Last Supper, and you could really find out whether the person on Jesus' right was you could stand at the foot of Golgotha and shed tears and express anger over the jeering that was going on. You could walk with Mary Magdalene on Easter Day and hear the angel announce, along with her, "He is risen." Wouldn't that be fantastic for you to come back and help the rest of us through our Bible study? You know, I frankly have become a bit enamored about this whole possibility of going back in time. You know, it was 104 years ago now that Albert Einstein indicated that time and space are not the absolute qualities that they once thought they were, and they're all relative. And that space and time are so interconnected that Einstein developed the word space-time. And it was only about 2 decades after Einstein's fantastic theory that people like Edwin Hubble were looking out into space, actually for the first time beyond our own galaxy, the Milky Way, to see other galaxies racing away from us and from one another at a speed that could be determined by what they call the redshift, the stretching of light. It gave the possibility of looking so far out that you could see into the past. And now we can actually, by the telescopes we have available, look almost all the way back to the Big Bang, about 13 billion years back. Wow. Wouldn't you like to just make that trip partway, just 2,000 years out, and have all this Bible study come together? What would it take, actually, for us not only to see that far, but to go that far into the past or into the future? I've thought about that too recently, by the way. If we could get into the future far enough to that day when many books of the Bible speak of the judgment day, I'd like to sit there in court and listen to God's verdicts echoing through eternity. And then, of course, if I could find my way back, I'd have some idea of what I could get away with. So how could we do this? How could we travel through space-time in order to get to that future time or back to Jesus' time? What would it take? Well, there are two possibilities, actually. The one is we could actually get in a ship that traveled really fast. Now, really fast means it would have to go 99.99999% the speed of light. At the moment, our fastest spacecraft will fly at 0.01% the speed of light. So that might not be a good idea. It's a bit far. The late and popular astrophysicist Carl Sagan wrote a book called Contact that was made into a movie with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. The story tells that an advanced civilization on Vega, the large star in the constellation Lyra, sent out many years earlier a series of radio signals that provided great details about building a machine. And no one knew at first what this machine was or for how it was supposed to work, but there seemed to be a pretty good indication it was designed to get to Vegas. And so Jodie Foster became one of the candidates for this trip. And what a ride it would be. Although there were some personal risks involved, let's take a peek at the conversation. 9 light years each way. A light year is how long it takes light to travel in a year, which is 6 trillion miles. Times that by 29 and you're into some pretty significant numbers. There must be another way than just shooting through space. I got so excited about that I bought a book on how to build a time machine that would go through a wormhole. I did. I thought this is the way to do it. And here's what I learned. You need a collider to deliver sufficient energy. Unfortunately, it requires more energy than exists in the world today. You need an imploder to squeeze all that energy down to a very minute black hole or a tiny, tiny wormhole that would be a funnel for the machine. None of us would fit into a space that's a trillionth of an inch in diameter, and so you need an inflator to expand the hole. Now then you're going to be in the different times, so you need a differentiator to establish the time you're coming from with the time you're going to. Now would you believe it? Some astrophysicists say it can be done. It's just that we don't have the technology yet. Well, there goes the plan. To visit the upper room, take a future trip to Judgment Day. So much for wormholes. Not to worry. God has already taken the share of the trip.